and deliver a better project that serves the needs of our community. Just to let you know, this project has been in some phase of thought or development since 2003. We've been talking about a bus rapid transit project using the Monterey branch line between Marina and serving the Sand City seaside areas and providing connections all the way through to downtown Monterey for many, many years. And it's finally starting to take shape and take vision and become at some point a reality as we move this forward and hopefully move this through the environmental phase and into design, hopefully get funding and someday construction. So with that, I know that's a ways off, but we want to share this with you. And Michelle, who's going to be leading the presentation? Will that be Lisa?
Our consultant is, I did want to mention a few housekeeping items.
Oh, sure, please go. So for that, welcome. And I will turn things over to Michelle, who will take it from there. So thank you all for showing up, and hopefully you enjoy our presentation.
Thanks, Carl. Thank you everyone for coming. I'm Michelle Overmeyer, Director of Planning and Innovation for MST. So a couple housekeeping items. This meeting is being recorded. We also have a Spanish-speaking staff member available for translations. So if there is anybody who needs Spanish translation, please raise your hand right now or type in the chat box so that we know. And then Teresa, maybe you can type in the chat box that Spanish translation is available if they can raise their hand and let us know. Otherwise, we'll be doing the meeting in English only. So I'll give her a minute to do that. The format of this presentation is the consultants will be doing a PowerPoint, and everybody is on mute right now. We're asking that you hold your questions until the end, and then there will be a question and answer session. You can type your questions in the chat box throughout the presentation, and then you can use the raise hand feature when you're ready to ask a question at the end. So far I don't see any hands raised requiring Spanish translation, and I don't see anything in the text box indicating that either. So I guess we can go ahead. I'm going to turn it over to Tad Stern with Kimley Horn.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you, Carl. I am Tad Stern with Kimley Horn. I'm the EIR project manager for this effort. During the presentation, I'm going to stop my video because my head will be turning in different directions. Okay. So welcome everybody to the EIR scoping meeting for MST's Surf Express Busway and Bus Rapid Transit project. And thank you for taking the time tonight. There are a lot of challenges out there that we're all facing right now, so we appreciate everybody's participation this evening. By way of introductions, listed here are the project team members that are with us tonight. From Monterey Salinas Transit, we have Carl Sidoric, Lisa Reinheimer, and Michelle Overmeyer. From TAMC, we have Madeline Jacobson. And from the Kimley Horn team, we have Peter Meyerhofer and myself, Tad Stern. And we'll be available at the end of the session to help field your questions and comments. Okay, here's a quick overview of our agenda tonight. We're going to touch on the purpose of this meeting and provide some background and a high-level overview of the project itself, explain a little bit about the California Environmental Quality Act and the environmental review that MST has already started. We'll also identify the key subjects and topics that are anticipated to be addressed in EIR, but most importantly, we'll provide an opportunity for agency representatives, organizations, members of the public to provide input to MST and the project team regarding what they would like to see addressed in this environmental document. The presentation is about 20 minutes long, and as Michelle noted, we'd like to get through the presentation, hold comments and questions there, but if any staff member or members of the team want to amplify or clarify anything along the way, please feel free. So before we get into the overview of the project, what is scoping and why is it important? Well, there's an EIR being prepared for what is a regionally significant and a transportation project that's going to connect communities and service a wide range of transit users. So this process and this meeting will help inform public agencies and the community about the environmental process. It will encourage agency and community input on the contents of the EIR, and will also serve as community outreach about the project. Because public outreach and disclosure is a major component of the environmental process, and MST staff has done a great job so far. We want to gather information and input to better address public concerns and basically make a better environmental document. What this meeting isn't tonight, it's not a meeting where decisions are going to be made, and it's not a meeting where we're going to get in debate about specific details of the project. I think we're going to have plenty of time for those events down the road during the process. Okay. So just by way of project background, Carl noted a couple items, but this project would use a portion of the old Southern Pacific Railroad Monterey branch line. Passenger rail feasibility studies have been going on for a while, since the 1990s, but really planning started in earnest with TAMC's acquisition of the segment of the branch line in 2003. And after that, there were a number of light rail options considered in 2010 and 2011. A lot of alternatives discussed. In fact, TAMC had gotten to the point of starting to prepare some environmental documents on a rail option. But in 2017, a feasibility study was prepared and looked at a broader range of alternatives, and I identified bus rapid transit and basically a bus vehicle solution as being more viable within this corridor. So with Monterey County voters' support with the passage of Measure X for transportation projects in 2016, and this project would leverage both local and federal funding and hopefully state funding in order to get to its implementation. So here are just some project highlights. So this is a very long project and it has a lot of details, but more than we're going to go into this evening. But at its base, this is 2 lanes of dedicated express busway, the majority of which are going to be outside of the public right-of-way and public roads. It's approximately 6 miles in length, going from the Marina Transit Exchange off Reservation Road down to Contra Costa in Sand City. MST plans for electric vehicles, zero-emission vehicles, as they continue to bring those vehicles online and into the inventory. This project is going to provide congestion relief along Highway 1, especially during the AM and PM commute hours, and also provide some connectivity to some of the existing and proposed non-vehicle trail connections, the ped and bike connections that are starting to make their way around the county. The project involves a new transit station at 5th Street. We're going to show some images of that in just a little bit. Another major objective is to reduce vehicle miles traveled within the region. VNT is a transit project. We certainly think that that's one of the primary components. And lastly, this project is going to be designed in order to retain the existing rail for future use. If and when there's ridership numbers that would support rail, the rail lines that are in the corridor now are not going to be torn out for this particular project. Okay, here's our first figure. I know at this scale it might be a little bit tough for people to see, but the yellow line here is the right-of-way for the SURF project, starting up at the north at the Marina Transit Exchange, going down Del Monte Boulevard and entering the TAMC right-of-way just past Palm Avenue over here. Continuing down the corridor to the California Fremont interchange, where the buses would re-enter the public right-of-way for the last leg down to Sand City. I'm going to see if I can just blow this up a little bit. That just provides a simulation of what the 2 lanes of dedicated busway would look like. It's Beach Range Road on the right and Highway 1 up to the left. And the typical section just showing the relationship of the railroad tracks to the recreation trail and Beach Range Road. Project limits, like I said, the majority of the project is within the TAMC rail right-of-way. This exhibit, the red lines, is just to illustrate the limits of construction, if you will. And this is the corridor where the construction of the project would take place within the right-of-way. This area down here, where you see this little node, is the proposed 5th Street station. Moving further south, you see our corridor go down to Sand City, and this last little bit, it's dashed. That is because this segment from Playa down to Contra Costa, the EIR is going to review this segment programmatically, as this piece of it would occur sometime in the future after construction of the other phases. Okay. So I'm going to turn over the next few slides to Peter Meyerhofer to get into a little bit of the detail on some of the key components of the project. Peter?
Thanks, Ted. Yeah, thanks, Ted. So as Ted mentioned, we're looking here at close to the north end of the new service route. The buses are going to originate, if you're starting at the north end, at the Reservation Road Transit Exchange, and they will make a left down Del Monte. And then what you're looking at here is where the buses would first enter and exit the existing TAMC rail right-of-way. So this is at Palm Del Monte intersection, where we'll have a first proposed dedicated BRT station. This will align with the existing bus stop that's out there today. They'll be aligned to be adjacent to each other. And then the buses will come in and out of the corridor, actually on Marina Drive, and then navigate through the intersection as it operates today. So there will be really no effect on any existing infrastructure at the signalized intersection of Del Monte and Palm. So, and then moving south a little bit, you'll see we're going to highlight 2 areas here. This is the first, where we're going to have a bike ped crossing of the proposed BRT lanes. So generally, as I'm sure most people are aware, Beach Range Road and the Monterey Bay Recreation Trail are heavily used with bicyclists and peds. And we're very sensitive to that, and really want to make sure that those facilities are maintained or improved with this project, and we believe they will be improved. In this case, this is an existing connection right here, where today Beach Range Road terminates at the north end and then forces users to go to the rec trail to continue north. So what we're going to propose with this is actually provide a new Class 1 connection that will extend Beach Range Road on the west side of the existing tracks north in the rail TAMC right-of-way all the way to the Del Monte intersection. So what this will allow then is any users on Beach Range Road can stay on Beach Range Road and just continue north. They will have the option, however, to cross over as they would today to the Monterey Bay Rec Trail as well. So, and there's a kind of a highlight there of that crossing. So it will be a stop control crossing for the buses. So very low speed, they'll stop and then continue on. Moving south, what you see here now in front of you is the proposed 5th Street station. Now, between this station that you're looking at now and the previous exhibit we just highlighted is about a couple miles worth of dedicated BRT lanes in the rail right-of-way. Generally, the BRT lanes are going to be running on the east side of the existing tracks, east side of the corridor. This is for a couple reasons. One, to minimize any visibility of the actual buses and the system. You really won't see it very well at all from Highway 1, nor will any users on Beach Range Road typically see it, except for we are going to cross the tracks to the west side, just north of the A Street overpass, to avoid some bridge columns. And then you can see here, it's kind of tough to see, but at the 5th Street underpass is where we will cross over again to the east side. And because of that, you know, we are actually going to utilize the existing 5th Street underpass to have the buses go under the Highway 1 freeway. And we're going to, we have a proposed brand new multimodal transit station that will have both parking, BRT stops. It will have proposed bike facilities and storage. It will also be a transfer point for city routes of buses as well, which are kind of highlighted in blue here. The purple would be the BRT. That's just for depiction purposes. There'll be a pickup drop-off. So this particular location here, you know, there's not a lot out there today. However, with significant developments planned, as well as the existing VA hospital and CSUMB nearby, this is going to be a critical point for the buses to provide service for this route. A couple other notes with this underpass. There is an existing 11-foot bike lane in this underpass, and that will be maintained, albeit just shifted over a little bit to provide space for the BRT lane. They will not be in conflict with each other. There will be fencing, you know, in between the two to prevent any conflicts. So the buses will turn in and out of the dedicated BRT lanes in the TMT right-of-way and go to the station and then back out again and continue south if they are starting from the north. So, and then one other, it's not shown here, but now you're looking at the existing Highway 1 Fremont interchange. Just north of here would be where existing Beach Range Road terminates, and again, would cross the existing tracks to connect into the rec trail. With this project, we're actually going to propose an extension of Beach Range Road that'll stay on the west side of the tracks, and that's highlighted here in with this green Class 1 bikeway that you see will extend adjacent to our BRT lanes all the way to the southbound ramp at Highway 1 interchange. So that existing crossing of the tracks will actually go away. So we won't have any conflict or between any BRT operations and bike ped users. So they'll have the ability to stay on Beach Range Road all the way to the interchange, or those using the rec trail will be able to stay on the rec trail all the way to the interchange. So this, as many of you know or are aware, this is a very congested intersection. The plan would be for the buses to integrate in just north of the existing signalized intersection via a proposed roundabout. This roundabout allows the buses to make a left turn into the intersection with ability to just navigate around the roundabout, no signal required. So the buses will then navigate through. They'll probably have some kind of transit signal priority through the intersection or extended green time to maximize operations and minimize any delays. And then ultimately what we're looking at possibly doing, not with this project, but as a underpass under the future intersection, but that would be a ways down. So once traveling through the signalized intersection, the buses will have the ability then to go back into the rail right-of-way that you see here at the existing entrance to the commercial center on California Avenue. And they would then continue in the rail right-of-way all the way to Playa Avenue. So wherein they would go back into the general purpose lanes on Del Monte South. So What you see here is kind of an ultimate plan again, where just south of Playa, we have in the Tampsey right-of-way ability to put a future transit stop in that can accommodate both BRT buses and city routes. So that is something that with the rail right-of-way as it stands, that we can certainly do. So that in a nutshell is how the bus system is going to operate from north to south and south to north. Since it is 2 lanes, we'll have the ability then to have bi-directional flow, both directions. So, and as Tad mentioned, the rail is going to be preserved for any future use, for any future commuter rail in the future. And yeah, with that, I will pass it back to Tad.
All right, thanks, Peter. Okay, now that that's the overview of the project that's being analyzed in the EIR. So right now what we're going to do is we're going to go back to one of the main reasons we're here tonight, and it's to talk about the project's environmental review process. So what's the purpose of CEQA and the EIR? And really at its base, it's to inform decision makers and the public of the potential significant environmental consequences of a project, and then to provide solutions, either mitigation measures or feasible design alternatives to address those effects. So the EIR may also identify several beneficial effects as this is a transit facility designed to take cars off the roadway. So, and finally, just in terms of CEQA language, a significant effect typically means a substantial or potentially substantial adverse physical change to the environment. And just a few more fun CEQA facts for us all tonight. So CEQA applies to all projects in California. MST is the lead agency responsible for carrying out the environmental review for this project, while TAMC is a responsible agency responsible for certain approvals and oversight of the project. CEQA is fundamentally based on a factual, impartial review to assist the decision makers. The process benefits greatly from early public consultation, and an EIR, the document that's being prepared, is the highest level of documentation and review afforded by the law. This project is also subject to the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA. NEPA is triggered by the federal funding sources. And as a transit project, the Federal Transit Administration, FTA, will be the federal lead agency, just as MST is the lead agency under CEQA. The NEPA documentation expected to be required for this project is a categorical exclusion, or CE, that would be supported by technical studies. So MST and the project team will be working with FTA on a parallel process, parallel to CEQA, to complete documentation in order to satisfy the FTA. And that process has already started. Now, these are the basic steps in the process that we're undertaking right now. There's a notice of preparation that's been prepared. We are in the public scoping meeting that we're doing tonight to get more information. After that, we'll be preparing the draft EIR on the project and circulating that EIR for a minimum of 45 days. After which, all comments will be received and responded to, and a final EIR will be prepared. And it's that final EIR that would ultimately get certified by MST together with the CEQA findings that are required. About the notice of preparation, the NOP was prepared and issued on August 13th, and it's out for a 30-day review. We're in the middle of that timeline right now. The NOP it essentially tells the world and the public that an EIR is underway and identifies the issue areas to be evaluated and gives a short summary of the project in order to generate initial input. It's kind of the first stage of getting public review and interest in a project. So the NOP was filed with the state and the county The entire notice was published in multiple publications in both English and Spanish. It's posted on the MST website. MST staff have done a really great job about, noticing and getting the word out about the project. And comments on the NOP will be received through September 14th. Now, even though we're still technically in the scoping phase, we have a pretty good idea and a good head start about the areas to be covered in the EIR, and the CEQA guidelines give us some initial guidance on that as well. So we're definitely going to be looking at aesthetics and visual resources. Basically, what is the project going to look like from prominent public viewing areas like Highway 1, like Fort Arduin State Park? Want to know what the effects of that, and we're going to use some simulations to provide those answers. Air quality and greenhouse gas emissions. As a transit project, our goal is to reduce emissions and reduce greenhouse gases, but we'll quantify and get those answers as well. Biological resources, we're in a disturbed rail corridor, but at the same time, we're adjacent to some protected dune habitat. And so we are going to be doing surveys for rare and sensitive plants or other species. Same thing with cultural and tribal and historic resources. I mean, the entire Central Coast is sensitive to cultural resources, so we'll make sure that we check our boxes there and provide adequate mitigation. Geology and soils, what earth are we going to disturb and how much? Hazards and hazardous materials need to be dealt with along the way if they're encountered. Hydrology and water quality, we're adding quite a bit of impervious surface within the rail corridor, so we need to make sure that the drainage plans are done correctly and are compliant with all the current regulations. Land use and planning is an important topic for this project. We touch 3 different cities and go adjacent to state parkland, and a lot of the project is within the coastal zone. Noise and vibration, we're introducing vehicles into a place where no vehicles are running, so we want to make sure that any sensitive receptors that might be affected are quantified, and we know what the differences in noise and vibration levels. Public services, this may relate more to police and fire and safety, more so than schools and libraries and that kind of thing. Recreation is important for this project, to analyze that, particularly with respect to the existing coastal recreation trail, to minimize any disruptions and to minimize and eliminate conflicts between existing facilities. We want to create connections to existing facilities, not cut them off or create conflicts. Transportation and mobility. This is a transportation project. This project is all about transportation and mobility. So the intent is to get positive beneficial effects of the project related to transportation. And finally, utilities and service systems. A project like this isn't going to require or generate the need for a lot of new utilities and services compared to, say, a residential subdivision. But at the same time, we are in a corridor. We want to make sure we're not interrupting any existing service systems or cause the need to relocate any existing systems. And finally, what's not on here is project alternatives. It's the obligation of the EIR to explore a reasonable range of alternatives to avoid or eliminate or reduce any impacts that we find associated with the project. Okay, so that is some background on CEQA, some background on the project, and you probably heard enough from us for right now. But this is really the most important part of the evening. MST is seeking input on the scope and content of the EIR. Input on the EIR is welcome tonight, but also comments on the NOP will continue to be collected by staff through September 14th. So participants and agency representatives, you're encouraged to also submit your comments in written format via email or snail mail. It's always good to get written comments just to make sure we have a correct record of what people's comments were. So we will be recording though, and we will have access to what we hear tonight, so we can also transcribe those comments. So we would encourage you to use the raise your hand function or use the chat function so that staff who's monitoring this right now can make sure that we unmute you and get your comments appropriately. So your contact person for the environmental review process, there's many people involved with this project, but for the environmental review, it's going to be Michelle Overmeyer, Director of Planning and Innovation. Her contact information is here. It's available in the presentation that will be on their website and also readily available at MST's website. And in terms of next steps, this is just our preliminary schedule. We look to have an administrative draft EIR done in November or December of this year. Public review would be after the first of the year with a final EIR in the spring to summer of 2021, and meetings on the project in the summer of 2021. So thank you again for your interest and participation tonight. I'm going to close out this presentation and turn my camera back on. And once again, you can use the raise your hand function so that we can get your comments recorded. And thanks again.
Thanks, Tad. We do have a couple comments in the chat box. So I'll start with the first one. Not clear what the circulation is around California Avenue and the MBSR. I think that's Monterey Bay Shore Resort. Please address that again. And then added to that comment, how are you going to improve the Monterey Regional Trail when buses are traveling to the west of the trail? So should we pull up that slide again, Tad? Around California Avenue?
Yeah, let me go get that.
And then the next comment was, will these slides be made available? And I heard you say yes. While you're doing that, I'm going to unmute our customer service rep that is on the line. You should be able to unmute yourself now, Teresa.
Hi, Michelle. I think I pressed the wrong, but I don't have no questions unless somebody has a question. And
did you want to just go ahead and say it in Spanish too right now, just in case?
okay, cualquier persona que necesite ayuda en español para poder traducirle, alce la mano o puede escribir en el chat también.
Thank you.
So Tad, if you want me to chime.
Yeah, Peter, that'd be great.
Okay. So yeah, a couple questions here. First off, with the Monterey Bay Rec Trail, that trail is actually going to be left, it's unaffected by this project. So the trail runs generally along the east right-of-way line of the TAMC corridor. So we really aren't touching the rec trail anywhere on the project. It's going to be left alone. The Beach Range Road Trail will also generally be left alone. We're not affecting the Beach Range Road at all. What we are doing with it is where it currently terminates at the southern end, we are going to extend it, as you can see here in this exhibit, to the Highway 1 Fremont interchange. And similarly on the north end where it terminates and then you're forced to cross the existing tracks, we're going to extend it north all the way to the Palm Del Monte intersection. So that's what's happening with Beach Range Road and the Monterey Bay Rec Trail. Now, as far as operations go at this intersection, so yeah, the buses would be running, the existing signal we're going to generally leave alone. The buses will travel through the intersection like, general public vehicles do. But we're looking at installing a roundabout, the north end here, which is, it's kind of interesting. This is technically the southbound ramp onto the freeway, but it also, in this location, it's two-way. It will serve as a entryway, ingress, egress for the future Monterey Bay Shores Eco Resort. We would also then come in from the left, and buses, let's say they're coming southbound, they would travel into the roundabout, make a counterclockwise rotation around the roundabout, and then travel south through the intersection. Conversely, if the buses are going south to north, they'll go through the intersection and then hit the roundabout and then make a right onto the BRT lanes. So we don't have any anticipated right-of-way encroachments with this other than the Caltrans right-of-way that encompasses the Highway 1 freeway and bridge that's shown there. So the green, again, is the extension of Beach Range Road coming south, and then the fingers that come off of it would connect into the existing trail that kind of goes around that corner and then kind of upper left out of your screen to the existing Class 1 bikeway. So, and then south at Playa, if we can bring up that exhibit, next one I think it is. So what you're seeing here is our preferred option, which is the buses will be going traveling in a dedicated lane in the TAMC right away. And cost permitting, that will be our preferred option. However, if this last segment is too expensive, we'll just have the buses run on California Avenue. But in either case, the buses will run north-south, either in the TAMC right-of-way or in California, and they will hit Playa Avenue and we'll either have a stop in the TAMC right-of-way, or you can see there's a bus stop on California. That's in a scenario where the buses are running south on California. But in either case, once they stop and let passengers on and off, they would make a left eastbound on Playa and then travel on to Del Monte north-south with the general traffic. Again, the TAMC right-of-way does extend south from Playa, so there is potential in the future that we could actually extend the dedicated lanes in that right-of-way as well. That would be a future phase of work, though.
Thanks, Peter. There was also a question, will there be any changes or improvements to California Avenue Fremont interchange? I think you just addressed that.
Yeah, and I'll maybe just note one other comment on that Fremont interchange. There are plans as a separate project to put in roundabouts there. That's not part of our project. So that's in the works too, but that's a few years out as well. So, but generally our project would not really be affecting any infrastructure there at that signalized intersection.
Another question, with the roundabout at California Avenue, have you considered the impact on the entrance to the eco resort?
Yeah, so that roundabout would be meet Caltrans design standards. It's a fairly low volume location. With the buses, we're talking a frequency or headway of 10 minutes. So that means a bus traveling through there every 10 minutes, which is from a traffic impact standpoint or level of service impact on intersection is minimal, if not no effect at all. So, so from a traffic perspective, it doesn't really have an impact. The advantage of a roundabout is that it provides continuous operations and it has no delay. Roundabouts are great when you have intersections like this that don't have a lot of traffic because it allows free flow movement from all segments. So.
I see no other questions right now. If you have a question, raise your hand or type it in the chat box. There's another comment. Makes more sense to have buses terminate on California Avenue, Fremont roundabouts. Okay. Okay, we have a couple more chats coming in. A comment to express enthusiasm for this project. Looks really great. Thank you. Then we have another one. Can you speak to the width of the bus road that will go along the eco resort? Maybe bring up the cross section again. That might answer that question.
Yeah, so this cross section is going to be typical along almost the entire corridor. The buses are going to be running next to the existing rail, which runs a little higher on ballast. So the buses are going to be basically in a kind of a depressed area in the 100-foot corridor. Generally, as I mentioned, they're going to be running on the east side of the tracks. And you know, we're going to use very minimal infrastructure required. So very few walls are going to be required in this corridor as well, because it's fairly well graded. And as mentioned, Tad mentioned, the buses are going to be zero emission, likely electric buses that, like any other car or electric car, are going to be very quiet as well.
I am not seeing any hands raised. If you're connected through the phone, if you press *9, that should raise your hand. If you're not connected through the internet. Thank you, Madeline. And then Tad, can you remind us when comments are due?
They are due on September 14th on the NOP. And again, really the focus for tonight was really to get input on the EIR, but as we know, the project, it's a very interesting project and there's a lot of interest in the project, so it's natural that we would talk about some of the project components a little bit more than we maybe normally would. But this is very helpful so far in just understanding what concerns or questions people have so far.
Well, I'm still not seeing any hands or any new comments or questions. So maybe we'll give it another minute and then we can end this meeting.
Okay, well, it looks like we've exhausted everyone for this afternoon, early evening. And thank you for everyone who has provided their comments. I think those comments that we have received will, we will consider those and use that to refine our future presentations. Because I'm sure if someone asked a question here, there are probably 10 more people who are thinking those same things, but just haven't raised their hands yet or spoke up yet. So I just want to thank everyone for coming today. And with that, there being no other business for us, we'll call it a meeting. So whoever is hosting us, you can take us out.
Thanks, Carl.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.